Those are temporary fixes, because when I get back from this fifth dimensional place, I'm stuck with the same old problems again, which is my crazy mind.
Cannabis truly is a pharmacy in a flower.
Survival comes with cooperation.
Pleasure is healing.
You're being a warrior of the weird.
I'm Lex Pelger, Director of Education at CV Sciences, and this is the Lex Files. What an enjoyable interview. You can tell that Spring Washam has been teaching about meditation, Buddhism, and the Dharma for many years, and that she's practical and grounded. I knew it'd be a good interview after reading her excellent book, A Fierce Heart, Finding Strength, Courage, and Wisdom in Any Moment. She weaves together stories from her own life, wonderful parables and quotes from the great wisdom teachers, and her explanations of the tenets of Buddhism. From being a founding teacher at the East Bay Meditation Center, to teaching kids in juvenile hall about meditation, to now combining ayahuasca with meditation, she stresses how messy, chaotic, and frightening meditation can be, and how the power is in staying with those feelings, in being in the moment. I felt personally challenged in reading and listening to her, and I hope you find inspiration as well. Also, I know I sound like a bit of a frog in this one, but I have a 3-year-old in preschool, so we're just sick most of the time. So it goes. Please enjoy this talk with Spring Washam. Hello, everybody, and thank you so much to Spring Washam for joining us today.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here with you.
And so you've been working on and around meditation for a long time. And my first question was, what first made meditation important to you?
Well, I was interested in it when I was really young. I was interested in psychology as a teenager, and I got very interested in the mind and mostly of why there was so much suffering. It was kind of like, I know this is a problem with my thinking. I just knew it, Yeah, there's a lot of issues around me, but somehow my mind, I knew, was at the forefront of the problem. And so I got very interested and started reading Eastern philosophy, and I got involved with a Hindu group at one point, Paramahansa Yogananda, the whole autobiography of a yogi, self-realization fellowship. I got involved with that. And then that kind of led me deeper into the path. And then I met my first real teacher. So it was all about suffering, my own mental state. That's it.
It's one of the great lines that I like from your book, which is meditation practice is not an escape. It's the opposite. And I was wondering if you could expand on that.
Yeah, I think that it gets that reputation as an escape. And I think for a lot of people, they can start almost delusionally using it as that. Like, I'm going to block out everything and just go into my happy bubble and shut down and ignore reality, ignore my problems. And, but the true path is sort of like you walk into the fire. You go right into the discomfort. You go into the pain. You sit with boredom. You sit with your sorrow. You sit with rage. You don't try to use the practice as a numbing device. And it gets used like that. It gets kind of taught in that way. And I think that's just people's own misunderstanding or their own lack of real experience in deep practice.
And so can you tell us the kind of meditation you first learned as you met your first teacher and how that developed?
Yeah, so initially I was sort of self-taught because this was, 20 something years ago, and there wasn't all the apps, the books. I mean, there was just like a handful of meditation books. I mean, now we're really inundated, which is amazing. But back then I was studying initially with a Hindu teacher, and I realized I wasn't making progress because, my Hindu teacher would just say, well, sit and feel God, and I would sit for 3 hours. But then my mind would be crazy, I'd be thinking about all my problems. I kept thinking, I don't know if this isn't like what I'm reading about. I'm just kind of ruminating on all my issues. Eventually I would have moments of peace after hours, my mind would give up and just go quiet. But I realized that I needed another approach, and I just happened to accidentally sign up. Not accidentally, I guess there's no accidents, but I wound up going to this 10-day retreat, and I didn't know it was Buddhist. I didn't know who taught it. Somebody said it's 10 days and they will teach you everything about real meditation. And I meant, okay, that's it. And also they had vegan food. So I was like, great. And it was silent. And I didn't want to talk to anybody because I was such a mess at the time. And so when I went there, I was really introduced to insight meditation, Vipassana, sort of Vipassana, that word meaning clear seeing. And we were practicing mindfulness, the 4 foundations of mindfulness, the breath, the body, being in the body. And it was during that 10-day retreat that I really started to learn all of these teachings. I met my first teacher who was leading the retreat, Jack Kornfield, who's a Buddhist scholar and teacher. And you can look up so many beautiful things about him and read his books. He was there, and then I got very pulled into that way of teaching, and that approach, the methodology, really resonated with me. And so from there, that has been a core foundation of my whole life.
And can you describe more about the technique itself and what differentiates it from some of the other meditation techniques?
Sure. So a lot of techniques at that point, I think, have this tendency that when people are meditating, they want to go somewhere else. I'm going to the 5th dimension or the light, or, to the different planet, or, there's this idea of escapism, which didn't help me. I wasn't drawn to that at an early age. I knew somehow, I just said, I'm not trying to get out of here. I need to be here, because when I get back from this 5th dimensional place, I'm stuck with the same old problems again, which is my crazy mind, right? And I was like, those are temporary fixes. I tried them. I did. I hoped for the best, but it just crashed and burned. I would come back into my reality, and it would be suffering. So the approach that I liked was that it was focused on this aspect of suffering. The whole of the Buddhist tradition was focused on, there's this pain. Do you know what I mean by this pain? Can you feel it? It's like, yes, I know this dissatisfaction, this pain. Well, there is an end to that. There's a cause of it and there's an end. So that pulled me in right there. I wasn't looking for let's all be light beings. I mean, I would want that, but I couldn't start there. It was too messy, right? It was like, no, this is a hot mess. I need someone who could address the mess, not the fixing it yet, and so the practice became, well, you know what to do with it. All the madness, the craziness, the noise is open to it. And that to me was profound. It was like, open to this feeling, open to the terror, open to the self-doubt. It seemed impossible, but then that was the invitation. Sit, open, feel, allow, see its transitory nature. Nothing is permanent. And the approach was, you sit and you begin with your breath. You begin with your body. You don't try to escape. You actually bring your consciousness embodied in the heart, in feeling your feet. The training is like sitting and walking, and you would sit for 45 minutes, an hour, and then walk for an hour, and you would feel your feet on the ground. So it was this whole idea of coming in versus going out. And that just, for me, felt like deep truth, that I wanted to be here, but free.
And you mentioned progress, and I think that's something that can trip a lot of us up. What do you say to students when they ask about their progress? Am I making enough progress? How am I doing, Doc?
Well, I'll ask them, how's your heart feel? Are you more loving? Are you more patient? Sometimes meditation makes people less patient, more neurotic, overly sensitized, less caring about others. That's how you know it's going in the wrong direction. My meditation practice always allowed me to be much more patient with life, right? So I don't really ask them about what their mind is experiencing so much as how the heart is living. How are you with yourself? What is the inner dialogue? Are you kinder? So that's really how I assess progress. And then we can fix the other things. But if we have that as a foundation, we can develop more concentration or we can add in other things. But if you don't really have that as your center piece or your guiding light, it's a little questionable just getting all the techniques down.
Can you explain how this relates to the 4 levels of the human system that you write about in your book?
Yeah, well, I talk about that as a more of a perception or the perspective as a healer, right? So I talk about these 4 levels, the human body, how we have this level of our system, this human form. What do we do with it, right? We're always doing something to it. And then I talk about the mental level, which is sort of the programs. And so when I talk about healing, I talk about healing on these 4 levels. First, the physical, then the mental, which is it's the place in the mind where it's all our beliefs and our programs. You could spend, 1,000 lifetimes just there, right? Like thinking about our thoughts, our beliefs. And that was what initially interested me in meditation. It was like, where do these thoughts come from? What am I thinking and believing about myself, the world, what's happening? I always knew that that was a place of enormous power, like freeing myself from habitual lies that I tell myself over and over again. I often refer to those as, the prisons of our mind. So the mental level is kind of that level where all of that information resides. Then we have the emotional body level, which if you've ever read Eckhart Tolle's book, A New Earth, or listened to a lot of his talks, he talks about this pain body almost as a second body, like a whole separate self, right? As all our emotions are stored. And I have come to see that that's a real truth, that there's another level. Our emotional system is reactive, right? We see it: violence, anger, rage, hurt, sorrow, fear. We're constantly reacting to our emotional landscape. So this is a whole physical part that, we need to bring healing to. And then I talk about the vibrational level, the 4th level, which is sort of like, I call that more of our light body. Like we are spirit, we're incarnated, but we know there's so much more than this. This is one dimension and we want to know it. We want to learn it. We want to inhabit it. But that's not the totality of the story here. And so our light body is where a lot of people, when they come to me seeking healing, they might have chronic pain, autoimmune disorders. A lot of these can be tracked to the energy body being blocked. Trauma blocks the energy body. Our energy doesn't flow. Our chi is tied up, right? And we feel it. We feel it as aches and pains. And so when I'm working with people on a shamanic level, I can assess what's happening on the 4 levels and look at where the problems are. One level affects the other, of course. They're interdependent. It's not like one whole separate one. When one is really affected, they're all affected. But I just use that as kind of a map as the healer on how I can help and see into what level of the system seems to be the most out of balance.
And that reminds me of another great line from your book. The school of life is not linear. It operates in circles and spirals. And I wonder if that applies to what you're just talking about, that you see progress on people's different levels at different times and kind of stops and starts. And we don't need to get worried about doing this one to completion, but just follow the spiral.
Yeah. In my life, I feel that they're never complete, or I don't know, that the goal is the path. It's like there is no end. There is no, it's like you kind of wrap your mind around that, and it takes out a kind of idea of the striving of an arrival, because when we're looking for an end, we're not really where we are. We're like, is this done? Did I finish this phase? Am I, like a school, like, how we are? I graduated. I'm done with the 10th grade. Get me out of here, So there's a kind of like, the real school is this like cycles, patterns, and spirals, because you think you get to the end and then you're at the beginning again. It's like you climb one mountain, you get to the top, you're like, yay. And then I see another mountain. And that's how my life always is. Whenever I think I've arrived, it's like, back down to the bottom again, because that seems to be the journey, is this up and down. And, it doesn't go kind of like an escalator up. It's not. First, you might be down at the bottom, and then you shoot up, and then you're here and there. And it can look, when we're in it, it can look like I'm not going anywhere. But then when we step back and look at a longer view, a 5-year view or something, we see, oh, look, yeah, there's tremendous growth here.
Step by step.
It is step by step.
And you write about what you call the great calling, at a time of uncertainty in somebody's life where things are getting really mixed up and hard, and that your unhappiness is one of the heavenly messengers that helps you to realize. What advice would you have for people who are feeling in that great calling schism in their life, and who might be interested in meditation, what it can do for them?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are in this phase right now because of the global pandemic. Everything, many people's lives kind of have the bottom fell off, right? And so then it's like, well, what is new? Who am I now? And they feel a calling. And I always think of the great calling as it's this call to a higher path. It's like your higher self. It's like, please stop doing these crazy things. Please, you're in pain, let's move. But that movement is hard. I always say we have a love-hate relationship with our demons. We're comfortable with them, right? We're used to them. So the calling is like, it's something that's saying, hey, there's a deeper aspect to your being here. There's a reason why you're here. And the call, I would say, it's the one call you have to answer, because it'll keep coming back and back and back. And it gets louder, right? And the universe gets more, I feel like, demanding, right? If we don't answer the first 10 calls, then we get sick or something, and we're in bed, and then we have to answer it, or, just something stops us. So many people I believe, are in this process of trying to move from one place to another. Maybe they've rethought their entire life in this last 12-month period, right? I don't want to do this work. I don't want to be in this relationship. I want to change my health. I want to get healthy. I think there has been a focus on mental health, physical health. And it's challenging. So when we're in this time, meditation can be so helpful, because when we stop and we pause, there's something profound that happens in the present moment. We're listening, finally, right? The mind is like, we try to stop, right? We try to just feel the breath, and then we just become present. It's almost like, now we can hear that higher place in us. Meditation is healing, and we don't always understand why. We don't. Something about being present heals the mind, and it's the great mystery of it. It's what Buddha discovered under the Bodhi tree. Pause button, open to everything, bear witness, and some deeper aspect of wisdom arises on its own. So if you're in that stage, hold on. You got to hold on, and start to practice, start to listen, start to feel some sense of power coming back as you become quiet. Even 5 minutes a day, even 10 minutes a day can be enough for a lot of people to really create a momentum of change.
You talked about working shamanically, and you write in your book, in shamanic terms, what we are not aware of is seen as the darkness, and what we are aware of is the light. So how does meditation bring these things into the light? What does that feel like?
Well, it feels like acknowledgement, right? Because so much of the Western world, and I think this is part of our unique suffering of Western culture, is our constant suppression of ourselves, our emotions, our truth in some way, right? We don't acknowledge suffering, right? I'm fine. I'm good. I'm great. Even in spiritual communities, it's kind of like, a fight to be blissful. Who's the blissful? The most, and we're ashamed of our pain. Right. And so, and I see this as a great disservice to oneself, because when you sit down and you open to the full range of your humanity, right? Just tears that are there that you don't want to feel, or the fear that you're too you won't let yourself come into contact with. These all become powerful healers, because once we allow ourselves to be with the truth of the moment, the wisdom arises after that. The truth of the moment has something to share with us. So the suppression of ourselves is like a block to, you could say, the greater force of wisdom in the universe. We block it because we're only willing to experience certain things. If it's not pleasant, I don't want it. Right? We're kind of like childlike in that way, right? I only want peanut butter and jelly. That's it. I'll live on that. But that's not, you can. You could try, but as we know, you won't be a balanced person, right? You'll get sick at some point. And so meditation, I always feel like mindfulness is like a mirror. It's honest. A mirror shows what's in front of it. It doesn't have a bias, right? You put something in front, it reflects, right? And so meditation creates an honesty with oneself. We're forced to deal with what's happening, not what we want the moment to be like. And there's a power in that.
It's very inspiring reading your work, even for someone who is scared of these Vipassana retreats and 10 days of silent retreat. Like my friends have done it. My wife found out she was pregnant with our first child. She was on a Vipassana retreat, which is really a head trip. But, I'm nervous. So what do you say that people are nervous about 10 days just with your own mind?
Well, I think that there's a lot of factors into that. Everybody on their first 10-day retreat is scared. But you have to understand, you're not spending 10 days with your mind as it is now. On some level you are, but what you're doing is you're training it to be present. So actually what's going to happen is your mind won't be in its normal habitual crazy state of tracking everything and wandering. It's like you're going to give it a training manual. It's like a fitness camp, right? And the more you're present, the more joy happens. That's what people discover. Right? It's not like, oh my God, the wrath of mindfulness is going to make me so miserable. I have to pay attention and I'll suffer with paying attention. Actually, it's the opposite. The first few days can be a rough entry because we're not used to that. But then as the days go on, the sweetness of presence starts to do something. Right? It's almost like we're drinking from this cup that we'd never drank from before. And we're like, wow, right. That's what happened to me on my first 10-day retreat. I entered in thinking I was falling apart arriving at my first 10-day retreat. I was just like, what is this? But it was through those days, day after day, there was like some purification. It's like I started to be able to hear myself and that connection that you feel. Because we often feel so disconnected, but being in the present moment is like instant connection, right? It's like everything we're looking for in a way. We want to be present with ourselves, but we don't know how. So the Vipassana retreats gives you this great opportunity to sort of taste that. So there's challenges, but you got to look at it as you're not going in with your normal habitual mind states. They'll be there, but the training is going to pull you in a direction where you'll experience a lot more presence. And that has a huge power and affects you. And it grows day by day as one is there. It's like anything that you're doing habitually, what happens? One moment leads to another moment. This moment leads to, so there's a kind of momentum that happens in a 10 days that creates kind of a beautiful journey. It's like you're going somewhere, but yet you're just going somewhere by being fully there. So don't be too afraid, but I understand everybody is terrified the first night of a retreat, even a 3-day retreat, even a day long. I've met, it's like, what am I? But we're so much more beautiful than we realize though. That's what's so funny is that people discover this like inner beauty And it's like, yes, yes, it's so much more glorious than what we imagine it will be. The ego comes out with a lot of terror stories to keep us from being in the present moment.
Yeah, that's true. And that's so much of it. I know for me, I don't want to spend that much time with myself. And it's funny because it's why so many people don't want to take psychedelic drugs, is because it's too much of me. It's the real me. And I'm fine with the psychedelics, but the meditation is much more scary, actually.
Mm,
Um,
hmm
and so you talked about suppression being so endemic to the West. And yet you started the East Bay Meditation Center, which is one of the most diverse and cool things going on in the meditation world. What's it been like for you to bring this Eastern way of thinking to the West and see how it integrates into this, the West of especially California?
Yeah, our center, we started in downtown Oakland, and Oakland, California has always been sort of kind of a special place. It's like a hotbed of activity and spirituality, from the Black Panthers to, Maharaji have walked through the streets there. It's like it's such a place of, a lot of openness and a lot of desire to understand suffering, the causes of suffering, and what could help end suffering. So, for a lot of the communities in Oakland, when I would give talks about the Buddhist teachings about pain and opening to it, they understood it. They knew exactly what I was talking about. There wasn't a wall there. It was like, yeah, yeah, we know this. So in a way, it wasn't like a hard sell. It was the center took off like overnight because people were longing for a way to work with their mind, right? To understand their pain, how to understand how their pain affected others, how their unconsciousness had an impact on others. So I taught a lot of mindfulness there, and also a lot of compassion practice, a lot of loving kindness practice, a lot of teachings on wisdom. And honestly, rather the person had more of a Christian background or a Muslim background or a Catholic background or whatever their faith was, they could really resonate with the idea of awareness, mindfulness. It's very adaptive, the word. And the practice is very inclusive. It's a simple practice, but as we know, hard to do, to be present.
And so what was it like for you teaching kids and the juvenile halls, teaching meditation there, which sounded like a fascinating part of your journey?
Yeah, those are the good old days. I think for me, when in juvenile hall, it was far less about trying to give them, a Zen delivery message. I think my time at juvenile hall was just teaching them in those hours how to be with themselves. So it was just like, here we are, guys, sitting in a room in juvenile hall. How are you? It was more like that. How are you doing? How are you really doing? And so I look back on my time, and it fed my soul. It was just the heart. I love those kids. And they taught me way more about love and compassion. I felt like every time I taught, I got a transmission. I would always thank them and they would thank me. So it was very sweet. And it opened my mind to service. It opened my mind to my heart expansion. So we did different exercises, but it was about merely helping them cope with where they were, which was a hard place to be. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, it sounded hard, what you were talking about
Mm.
in the book, and it speaks to how much that can be helpful. And so I wanted to ask you about, how do you see the Dharma influencing social justice and these two ideas working together, especially now in today's world?
Yeah, I think, the Dharma, it's in an initial wave, you could say. First wave, second wave, it's evolving in our culture. But the first wave came with a lot of wealthy white people who were more prone to use the Dharma in a certain way, right? And I'm not going to use the word corrupted. That's a bit extreme. but in a way, it was appropriated to kind of be used as like a treatment, right? I go here and then I get my mind positive, and I kind of push out all this negativity, which I think was a block for communities of color and social justice people. They didn't see the connection when they looked at the mainstream. Like Time magazine had a supermodel on the cover of their mindfulness edition who looked blissed out, right? People on retreat do not look blissed out. They're wearing old sweatpants. They have Kleenexes in their pockets. They're, processing their life. They have regrets and shame and awarenesses. It's not, that's the illusion. And so it created a gap with activists. They weren't interested in that model of enlightenment. Like, no, thank you. But as we go deeper into the message, as the Dharma becomes more pervasive, and it's taught by different people, different voices, different influences, people in the activist community are taking a second look at it. How can this really be applicable to my work on the front lines? How can this help me in my own moment of trauma and anxiety? So it's about the voice that's delivering, and it's about that, how it went to our culture and how it's elevating, it's moving, it's flowing, and it's deepening like any tradition would over time. It's a second wave, I say, happening.
And what advice would you have for seekers listening who are interested in meditation, who want to bring their social justice side to this? I mean, how to get involved, how to proceed?
Yeah, well, the good thing is that you can just, there's a lot of groups merging. For me, I had started a group that started last summer. It was called the Dharma of Harriet Tubman, because it was right after all these killings happened in the summer, and May of 2020 was so volatile in California and all over, really. And so I started a group called the Dharma of Harriet Tubman, where I was merging, sort of Black liberation theology with Buddhism. And it caught on, and it was really popular. And I ended it because I'm writing a book about Harriet now. So I too am merging these together. So this, as I say, is the second wave. So there's a lot of great teachers who are writing this. I'm one writing about this particular spirit, our ancestor, Harriet Tubman, but there's a lot of new, momentous, beautiful books, writings, teachings, merging social justice, merging Dharma. And, one of my good friends, Lama Rod Owens, he wrote this great book called Love and Rage, right? Just kind of an activist handbook in a way, full of meditation and Dharma practice that is so helpful. So I highly recommend people read those books and start to expand your thoughts around who meditation is for and who it's not for. The idea of who can do it and who can. You don't need to go to Whole Foods Market or wear Lululemon yoga pants to meditate. You can be in saggy jeans. I mean, I saw that in downtown Oakland. I mean, it blew my mind, the people that would show up. We had a free class Thursday night, door open downtown. And the people who would come in, I would be so excited because they would not be people who you would classically think, maybe they had tattoos and, jewelry and, and then they'd be like, yeah, I really want to learn how to be with my mind. I've been thinking of this. And I was like, great, come on in, and they would become some of the best students. So there's a lot of stereotypes. So I would tell your friends and your community, don't put yourself in a box here, that you'll find your tribe. They're there. They're out there.
Hey folks, it's sponsor time. The company is CV Sciences, the product is Plus CBD, and the discount code for 20% off is Lex Files. And remember, the top 3 reasons to use that code on pluscbdoil.com. Number 1, I would give Plus CBD to your grandmother because I gave it to my grandmother. Number 2, I was the biggest skeptic. Then I started studying the endocannabinoid system. Number 3, I know firsthand that CV Sciences is committed to pure science and to enhancing well-being. So when you find yourself in need of CBD from true agricultural hemp, consider Plus CBD, the #1 CBD brand in the United States. That coupon code is Lex Files, and the place to use it is pluscbdoil.com.
Speaking of, your book is so filled with great quotes and stories from the old wisdom books, and it's just wonderful. It's delightful. I was wondering if you have some books that early influenced you that you'd care to share that were really helpful, or even some newer ones about new synergies of Buddhism that you might recommend to people.
There's so many of them, though. I think for me, I read so many early on in my life. That was sort of like the classical Dharma heavyweight books. I studied so much of that. But there's a lot of books like the one I just mentioned by Lama Rod Owens. There's a book, depends on, I guess, really what genre you're interested in, social justice or, but there's so many great books. There's a great book by Sebene Selassie called We Belong. And it's just, these are different ways of talking about the wisdom tradition. So I think a lot of this also is going to be, based on what you're interested in. There's a lot of books right now merging, neuroscience and Buddhism, like the Buddha's brain unraveled, there's so many little areas. So I think that first, for people who are interested, there's art in Dharma, there's, and so some of the books that had the biggest influence on me, honestly, they were some of the great classical books written by some of the great masters who have died. The old books about compassion and the Bodhisattva way of life are pretty much my they're like my Bibles. I don't read the Bible, but they're my spiritual heavies, that I go to. So not as much modern, I guess modernism, although all my friends are writing so many amazing books, and I just mentioned a couple of them, but yeah. And also one book that I think is a classic is Ram Dass's book, Be Here Now. I think like everybody should have a copy of that book. The whole middle of it is the whole acid journey. So you won't make sense of the whole middle section. It's a lot of drawings and so forth. But the whole book itself is a profound teaching. So I would recommend that to a lot of people. Start with Be Here Now, especially what might be appealing to your audience, because it goes far beyond generations, age and background.
Speaking of drugs, what do you have to say to people who are curious about combining things like cannabis or low doses psychedelics with their meditation? I mean, how do you respond to students when they come up with that question?
Well, I get these questions a lot because I do work with ayahuasca, which is a plant-based medicine, and I run retreats in South America, and we work out of a 14-day retreat, we have 6 or 7 nights where we work with meditation and ayahuasca. So I do get questions like this. Yeah, it's pretty full on. Those are my advanced retreats. But for a lot of people, it really depends on where they are in their practice and their psychology. If somebody is very ungrounded, they don't know a lot about meditation, they haven't been on years of retreats or understand what it is that they're trying to do, I don't think bringing in cannabis or anything else is going to be helpful. I think first, meet the mind. I had years of practice before I started working with ayahuasca. I was on retreats for 3-4 years, going all the time, 3 months, 4 months, been all over the world. I was already founded a center. So I was grounded in the roots, a bit of the tradition. I think when people tend to jump too fast to this and that, they never get the baseline of the practice. They never get a deep root. I guess that's it. They dig a lot of shallow ones. And so if you're going to start a meditation practice, I think the best thing is to go on some of these retreats with the mind just clear, open, discover the power of that. And then as you grow and evolve, see what your motivation is for bringing in something else. Like, why do I need that? Or if I do, or is that a good thing? Or if not, and make a clear decision. Because sometimes we do things out of habit. We don't really want to be fully in the moment. We want to half be in the moment, but half be, in the fifth dimension. So we can corrupt our practices. So we just need to understand our motivation. So first, dig a deep hole, understand your mind, and, grow with the practice of mindfulness, understand the practice, give yourself to that fully, and then expand from that. So it shouldn't be the reverse, although people come into practice differently, but that would be my advice to someone. I would assess that situation.
Great. Thank you. That's very helpful, personally as well. And I was curious, when you combine ayahuasca with meditation, what are the best practices you found, and how do you see it going in these ceremonies?
Well, when I started working with ayahuasca years ago, it was really to treat trauma that was coming up during meditation retreats. Like it was I started, I was on this long retreat and I disassociated. I thought I had resolved all of this trauma. And then I was on this super long retreat working really intensely doing these concentration practices, and I completely fell apart. I didn't know what was going on. All I knew is I was like, help! And no one seemed to be able to help. It was like Humpty Dumpty fell down and was cracked, and no one had an answer. And they were like, go back and meditate more. I was like, I can't. So I ended up meeting a psychologist. This was years ago, before ayahuasca and plant medicine were even anywhere really on the main stage. Yeah, a little bit, but not really. And they said, oh my God, you have all this trauma. You should come to a ceremony with a tiny group of people, and maybe this plant could help you. And I was so down and out. I was open to whatever. I was like, if you told me to swim with dolphins, I would have swam with dolphins. If you would have told me, I was like, anything, please. So that's where my practice started. It was to heal this very deep down, stuck childhood trauma, from abuse and old things that had happened, betrayals that I had never fully dealt with. I thought I dealt with them. And so for me, when I approach ayahuasca, it's very much as a healer. And our ceremonies are steeped in the Buddhist tradition. We have precepts on our retreat. We meditate throughout. We chant. We study core pieces of the Dharma together. And then our ceremonies become a way to practice what I call ultimate meditation. As the group sitting there, I'm like, okay, everyone, here's the goal. Stay present for whatever arises. Okay, it's good. Whatever arises, do your best. So it's like a training. Because that's what I did. I had so many years I practiced that when I went to Peru and South America. I had this incredible ability to be in intensity. I mean, intense. The room's intense and the jungle is no joke. And I could sit and I could be with it. And I realized my practice got stronger from being able to do that in moments of full on, chaos or bliss or love or terror, whatever was arising, I could meet it. So I look at my ayahuasca work as that of a curandera. People come seeking healing. We work with them. It's a hospital setting for people. And the Dharma is a part of the medicine. It's a treatment with the plants.
That sounds wonderful. And I wonder if there are contraindications. Are there things you screen for people, both for getting into meditation as well as ayahuasca?
Oh, yes. Our screening process is very rigorous. People have to fill out long questionnaires. We go through in person, video calls. They can't have had psychiatric breaks or, these plants aren't right for everyone, right? They can be right for some people, but to come on a retreat like mine is very accelerated. Right? It's like taking someone from 1 to 100 really fast. Now, if you have a practice and you're ready and you're like, I'm ready to go, it's okay. But there has to be a lot of We only take people who have a strong background in practice, who have a certain lifestyle of love and compassion. We're sort of a boutique hotel. I'm not a mass market. We can't take people who have addiction issues because we just can't treat them there. We're only kind of treating a certain type of condition. There are so many other centers, some that work with addiction, some that work with people with terminal illnesses. But we do have a big screening process, and also on meditation retreats, having been a teacher at Spirit Rock for so many years, in the beginning, we didn't really have a lot of checks. It was like, okay, someone's meditating, here they come. Okay, hi, here's your room, and then there was a lot of problems starting to happen. It was like, whoa, okay, wrong person, wrong retreat. Wow, over time, we've all evolved. It used to be like, come, join us. And then everyone has had to make sure to protect the people who are maybe that experience will create a trauma or create a destabilizing effect. That's not what we want. So some people don't need intensities that retreats are. Retreats are super focused, where they might need just a couple hour class. They don't need 7 days of nonstop, So we assess people based on the right medicine that they can handle, the right amount of meditation, the right amount of medicine, and some can handle a lot, and some it's just not the right thing. Other practices are what they need. So we have a vigorous screening process, and we turn away a fair bit of people for various reasons if we feel like it may not be a good experience for them.
That's great. That's really great to hear, especially the learning process of figuring out that this, even meditation itself isn't for everybody.
No, meditation itself. And now there's a lot more screenings, even in the Vipassana community. They used to accept everyone. The Goenka retreats, where those the free 10-day retreats that you show up at. Now there's a rigorous screening process, and they turn a fair bit of people away. We've all learned through experiences, and we don't want someone to hurt themselves or anyone else. I mean, that's like, our oath is do no harm. And so if somebody doesn't recognize that, wow, this could be not a good experience because just your background, we want to funnel them in the direction of a positive experience with something else that could be healing and helpful for the stage that person is in. So it's really compassion.
And you talk a lot about mindfulness meditation. What are some of the other types of meditation, and what do they bring? Why were they created as well?
Well, if we take the Buddhist tradition for an example, we could really answer that question, because within the Buddhist tradition, there are different schools, you could say, right? So you think of Buddhism, you think of maybe a Zen master in Japan and really fierce, and then then you have Thailand, and it's a little more relaxed, and the monks are moving. Then you have Tibetan Buddhism with bells and drums and mantras and the mystics of the mountains. All of these are, you got to understand that all the techniques are trying to do one thing, and that is to wake us up, bring us into the present moment. And rather you're doing a mantra, or you're doing some kind of martial arts practice, or you're doing walking meditation, or you're doing a visualization of a Buddhist deity, the idea is that you're present. So they're all training the mind to see its true nature, to wake up from the prison of the mind, right? So all of these in some way are complementary. They're similar. They have the same goal, but they appeal to different people, and that's why in the Buddhist tradition, they say we have 84,000 Dharma doors. Walk through one of them. So, different people resonate with different things. Some people can't sit still, but they can do yoga, and they find that stillness there. Right. So different practices and different meditations. So for people who are really new and want to see what might resonate, I would say try them out, and different teachers, different styles, different traditions, and then see what helps you stay grounded, what helps you. All of them should point back to being in the moment, being present with what's happening. That's how you know it's a good path, unless you're doing a specific practice where you're intentionally going out and journeying or trying to experience something. But a regular practice, even a mantra recitation practice, you merge with the mantra, you become one and present with the sound and the repetition. So there's a lot of opportunities for people to see what they're drawn to.
What are the 3 jewels of the Buddha that you talk about in your book?
Yeah, so I love this question. So the 3 jewels are what we refer to as refuges. So if you think about taking refuge, like this is a good time during the pandemic. Everyone was like, where am I sheltering? Where's my refuge? Right? That was like a really great, it's like, wow, okay, there's a physical refuge, but where's your mental refuge? People really wanted the answer to that. What do I do? I can't go out. Where is my refuge? Right? Where is it? So in the Buddhist tradition, the Buddha said that there's 3 things that you can take refuge in that are unwavering truth, basically. So the first refuge is taking refuge in Buddha nature. Now, Buddha nature is your own awakened mind. I always felt like Buddhism was very optimistic. It's like, first Dharma talk I heard, it was like, okay, the Buddha says you're enlightened, but you forgot. Which is so much better than being kind of like, you're born bad and you'll never be bad and you'll have to repent, or, it's kind of like this original sin idea, like I'm born bad. Oh no, we really internalize that, But here it was very optimistic. It's like, no, actually you're fully enlightened, but you just have no memory of this. And so the whole journey is waking up to it. The whole thing is to get out of the prison and to see your awake nature. So we take refuge in our awake nature before we see our awake nature. We go, okay, somewhere deep in me is a wise person, a good person. We feel that. All of us have moments like that. We've seen our greatness. It might be a glimpse, maybe a moment, or maybe, but we see that. Okay, so we take refuge intentionally in that, my own awakened heart. So that kind of helps us feel better, right? That gets us on the right track right away. So then we're like, okay, I take refuge in that. So then we take refuge in the Dharma, the jewel. And again, he called these jewels because they're precious, these three, I call them islands, the 3 islands, I often refer to them as. So we take refuge in the Dharma, which the Dharma is the path. The Dharma is the teachings. The ones we read, the ones we study, the ones we learn about the 4 foundations of mindfulness and how to practice and being present and forgiveness. And, we need the teaching. So we take refuge in the teachings of the way things are, right? So we go. So when the chips are down, instead of maybe getting drunk or going crazy, we take refuge in our awakened self. And then we pick up some of the teachings and start to apply them. Right? So these are becoming the true jewels. The third jewel is, of course, the beloved community. We don't, have the African proverb that says, if you want to go faster, go alone. But if you want to go farther, go together. Right? So meaning that we go as a community. And it's very hard. I wouldn't be able to make it without all my friends. Oh my goodness. When I forget something, they remind me. When they forget, they call me and I remind them. It's like this back and forth. I don't know what's going on. Okay, remember this. Remember your true nature. It's like, oh yeah, thank you. And then it could be like the very next day. It's like, oh right, remember what you were telling me? Okay, now I'm going to tell you. The Sangha means the beloved community, that we need a refuge of like-minded people to pursue this path. And so when you have friends that you love that are on this path, value them. They're a jewel because they remind you. They don't pull you in the opposite direction. They pull you forward. And that's what you want. We've all had friends who we always went downhill with, we're like, oh man, why do I hang out with that person? Right? And then we're like, oh, well, that's not a refuge friend, a jewel friend. A jewel friend is the one that reminds you of who you are and your highest priority. And so that's the 3 jewels.
Great. Thank you. And that's a really optimistic, as you said, side of things. And the next question is actually pessimistic, but you had a great answer to it. How do we love the people who hate us?
Yeah, I get that question so many times, and I've thought about it myself, just being a Black woman, all these people who are like, out for, I don't know what they're out for, but I look at it as more as just delusion. Like it's a hatred and a delusion. And I start taking it less personally because I see it as like a prison, a poison in the mind, a prison of their mind. Like that would create, I don't even think it's personal. It's like, you're online and you see people hating on people. They don't even know who these people are. Most of the people that hate us, they don't know us. They're just like, they just looking for hate. It's like, hate. You're just walking by. It's not even, you can be anyone. Okay. So I really kind of don't take it personally. Where it gets tricky is when there is an invasion, there's a crime, and there's like, where we have to stand up now as a community. But individual haters, I think it's kind of funny actually, to not respond to it because it's so ridiculous, because it's anyone and everybody. So it's like, hey, okay. So I do respond with compassion. Like, wow, that's must be a sucky day, just be sitting around acting like that all day. But hey, it's a free world, So I think that is kind of my approach, actually, and it's fearless at times. I have to stand up a lot, and then let it roll off because it's not even about me. It's their head. It's their thought. It's their mind. It doesn't make it true just because I said it. So that's kind of how I am. And my response to the bigger, wider movement is like, I'm going to stand up for, Black Lives Matter and people who are being discriminated in the LGBTQ community and trans community. Like I want to stand tall, and I will, because that's also what my heart wants to do. We stand for love,
And that's a perfect lead into the very last question. How do we find a path with heart?
Yeah, you'll know it when you find it, because if the path, and I just was writing about this the other day about false prophets, because I'm writing a lot of prophetic things right now. So it's like, what is a false prophet? Often it's if you find yourself with a teacher who is teaching hatred on some form, even subtly, judgmental, digs, separation, always separation. A real heart-based, wise teacher will always teach a form of unity consciousness, interconnectedness. We are all one. We are waking up collectively, right? Let's bring people together. So you'll find your path with heart when it's spoken about. If you go to a teacher and they say, this is a class about the heart, and they don't mention anything about how to practice love and compassion, they're not really teaching that, and so choose your teacher, how you feel when you're around them. Do they appeal to your ego, or do they appeal to the highest part of you? Do they make you a better person? Because there's feeling good on an egoic stroke level, right? I get power. Yeah, we're on the club, like the gang mentality, but subtler, of course. Or there's the pull to rise, to be of service. If your path with heart will always want to help. If it lacks that, it's probably not that great after a period of time. If you're not having more thoughts about serving other beings, helping other beings, feeling the desire to serve in some way, it's probably not a lot of heart on that path. So you can begin to decipher that. And that's how I gauge people on their practices all the time. I just listen to how they talk about their life and like, and what kind of work do you do? And what are your days like? Okay, diagnosis, not enough heart. Usually that's it. So I'll say, go out and just serve.
I bet you're a tough doctor.
Not really, because I say it with a lot of humor. So I'm not that harsh, but people only come to me when they want my advice. You don't show up with Dr. Spring in Peru unless you're looking, you came because you really want to make a change. So I oblige, and I do it with a lot of love. I mean, we're all helping each other. My clients are me. I'm just looking in a mirror. So wherever they're struggling, I find it, where am I too? Yeah, that's very interesting how they're showing up here. Where am I doing that? So I always apply it, to myself as well. It's not one-sided advice. It's like, okay, let's all look at this.
That's great. I very much appreciate your practicality in these matters. And thank you so much for coming on and sharing today.
You're so welcome. I enjoyed it.
To everyone listening, the book is A Fierce Heart, Finding Strength, Courage, and Wisdom in Any Moment. It's excellent. It's really excellent. I had a great time reading it and feels like it's going to help me a lot in the weeks to come. So Spring Washam, thank you so much. And hopefully we'll get to see each other at a retreat somewhere or somewhere scary like that. That's good for me.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in. To listen to other episodes, check out pluscbdoil.com, listen on all the podcast platforms, or see us on YouTube. Subscribe to the CV Sciences YouTube channel to see each new episode. And if you'd like to buy any of our fine products, use the coupon code Lex Files for 25% off. If you have any questions, compliments, or suggestions, feel free to write me at research@cvsciences.com, and please follow the podcast on Twitter @The Lex Files Show, where I try to keep it fun. If you enjoyed this program, please give us a like on your favorite platform or share a link to your social media. It means a lot to us. The Lex Files is produced by Matt Payne. The YouTube videos are by Brendan Cleek. Thank you to Tina Molnar and Jasmine Morris for the visuals, and the music is by Jake Bradford Sharp. Our sponsor is CV Sciences, makers of America's favorite CBD oil. And I'm Lex Pelger, signing off.